course he sweats with fear, we break to run. The mighty roar of the Russian guns. And as we race toward the human wall, the screams of pain. As my comrades fall, we hurdle bodies that lay on the ground. And as the Russians fire another round, we get so near, yet so far away. We won't live to fight another day. This is the Community Solutions Podcast. Jason Bradley, Andrew Richter, taking it to the other side like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah.
Here we are.
Yeah, that was not the most uplifting lyrics. There.
No.
I mean, why don't you enlighten? I'm not even going to take a guess as to who that was. Why don't you just, you know what you got to do?
Yeah. I should start a playlist.
No, what what you ought to do is you ought to turn the melody on and sing it like you're doing karaoke.
Really?
Because then maybe I would recognize the
maybe
instrumentation a little bit better. Sometimes when I just hear a chorus, I don't. It doesn't. I mean, maybe I'd get like 4 out of 100 if you were karaokeing it, or as they say in San Francisco, karaoke. I don't know how you get karaoke out of how it's spelled, but whatever. It's like if I heard the tune, it would help me in my
maybe 1% we could try that.
Guessing.
Maybe we could try that. I'll give you the music end of it off air, and then we'll come on air. That way, it's not that I don't want to pay royalties on stuff. I mean, that's why we're running the Spotify playlist.
True,
so that,
I get that part of it.
Yeah.
But I just, like I said, pop culture to me is Michael Jackson and Whitney Houston. It's not not anything that you're saying. So who was that? Enlighten us this week on who that was.
That's Dance Everybody by Barry Manilow. No,
Barry Manilow.
No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
that is the
not Barry. I would have believed it.
Barry Manilow is pretty uplifting, I think. I think he's a little too happy with some of his lyrics, but I tend to enjoy some of the things that are more in minor keys and have a little bit of tension to them. This is The Trooper by Iron Maiden. So it's a good story about war with Russia. Everybody loves a good war with Russia these days.
Iron Maiden, I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. Well, you remember, like in Bill and Ted's movies where they go, Iron Maiden, bogus. Put them in the Iron Maiden.
All I remember from that movie was Socrates and Napoleon. They didn't think his battle plan would work. Remember that? And he yelled something in French or something. I don't know. Good movie though. I gotta say, Bill and Ted was people would make fun of it, but I thought it was rather creative. In my book, I know my book's pretty thin, not a lot of pages in it, but
Well, I thought this was fitting because, and we'll get into this, but today's topic deals a lot with you have the whole when you look at Russia and by proxy the Soviet Union and a lot of the socialist / communistic type ideals that are promulgated by that type of thinking. Stay tuned. We'll get into that.
They have. And Jay, before we get into that, though, I've had a very reflective week.
Yes. When you were looking in the mirror a lot? Or
flexing and everything, okay. Sure. And maybe shaving a little bit, too.
Good.
But since the last show, we've had the passing of former President Bush.
Yes.
Bush 41. And so it's been a reflective time for me, thinking back to those years and my early teens type years. I feel like George Bush Sr. is kind of a forgotten president today. I mean, you think of Reagan in the 80s, Clinton in the 90s, Bush Jr. When you say Bush, W is the person most people think of. And
I think part of that, though, is because he had 2 terms and his father only had 1. Think about Carter. I mean, all you think of are high taxes and the Iranian,
greatest
hijacking.
Saturday Night Live skit ever.
But I think one-term presidents, I think you kind of lose sight of they don't really get to build a legacy very much.
And you just forget. It's amazing how much you forget. I just been reflective because I remember when President Reagan passed away, and he's the first president I remember. Now, I was born January 10th, 1977, so I had 10 days left in Ford's administration, and I don't remember Jimmy Carter as president. But I remember it was like Yeah, like weird that to say part of your childhood kind of died when he died. But President Reagan was, I kind of looked at him as like a grandfatherly kind of figure. My lasting image, I remember when, and I've told you this before, and maybe I've mentioned it on the air, but the day the Challenger exploded, I remember we watched that at school. I remember because the Bears won the Super Bowl, and it was the next day that happened. And I vividly remember President, and this is before instant news, before, it's such a different world than it is now. President Reagan speaking that night, it was just very different. And I remember it was so weird when President Bush became president. I'm like, wow, there's a new president now. I've never gone through this before.
Right.
It was a learning. I mean, and just with President Reagan, it's like part of my childhood was gone. I felt the same way strangely when Kirby Puckett passed away. It was kind of like, I don't know too many people, who played Little League and stuff when we grew up, who didn't, the Twins won the World Series a couple times. Kirby Puckett was their best player. Yeah. I know he had problems after he retired and that kind of stuff, but it was kind of a, gee whiz. I mean, Kirby Puckett can die, and it's he was only like 48 years old or something. And I think with President Bush, it's just a weird feeling when, I went back and YouTubed his famous argument with Dan Rather, and there's I looked up a few Dana Carvey Saturday Night Live things that I remember watching, and so it's just it's hard to believe. 26 years since he was president of the United States, Jay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to believe how much time has gone by since 1992. Or January 93, I guess I should say. But I mean, how that seems like not that long ago, and in a way, it seems like 100 years ago. It's just a weird feeling.
Well, I don't know if part of that is getting older, but I think part of that is also when you look at the way that society used to be. I mean, President Bush was 41, was really the last president in, I don't want to say the old way of doing things, but like, I think our society has changed forever since the Clinton presidency. Yeah. Ever since the whole really Monica Lewinsky thing, yes. Things have changed, and I don't believe for the better in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm not being a pessimist here. I mean, there are plenty of good things that have come about, over time. But I am saying that you look at that, and then you look at 8 years later, we have the attack on the Twin Towers and how that then changed our society when you think about the Patriot Act and all the things that have come because of that. And now you think about the growth in technology and what it means when they finally turn on artificial intelligence, with what Google is doing in China. And I don't know if you've read much on that, but pretty much they can find anybody they want in a nation of, how many billion people, like instantly? Yeah. Yep. It's scary stuff, but China's working with Venezuela now, and how long is it till they start using that stuff here? Hopefully never, But
microchips and stuff are being used on pets. I mean, what's the next step in using that in kids?
Microsoft with a lot of the tracking that they're doing with Common Core and all that.
I think you're right.
It was the last president of kind of a sane time.
I also think that it was with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the ideological struggle between the East and the West became very murky after that.
Yeah.
And I think President Clinton, also being the first post-World War II president, grew up in a different time, in a different, he grew up in the 60s and 70s, whereas Reagan, Bush, Carter, Kennedy, Ford, Nixon, all kind of grew up in the same era. They were born in the teens and the 20s, and World War II and the Depression was their formative experience.
Yeah.
And then the post-war baby boom and prosperity of the, generally speaking, of the 50s was very, very different than what the people born in the baby boom went through with Vietnam and the sort of the culture shift in the country. And I think that so that generational thing, I think, is another thing that made the Bush-Clinton jump so profound.
Right.
You know, it was completely. It's kind of like it's not as great, but like when President Eisenhower left and President Kennedy came in, the first president born in this century, the 20th century.
Yeah.
Eisenhower being the grandfatherly Reagan-like figure, Kennedy being 25 years younger.
Right.
Completely different, young family. The change was so predominant.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. I think and I don't know if it's because technology's been so great for so many businesses.
Medical advances.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's been a net plus. I think what has also happened since that era is the polarization of politics has become something unseen in this. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't always polarized. Go look up John Quincy Adams versus Andrew Jackson in 1828. Okay, if you want to see some mudslinging.
Well, even Jefferson and Adams.
Yeah,
his father.
Who were great friends at one time
Yeah.
and would become friends again later in the era of good feelings under Monroe.
They said some terrible things about each other.
Yeah, I mean, but I think they were being guarded by people too. I think
Right.
their instincts were not that. But you know, the whole, you've seen the red states get redder, the blue states get bluer. The parties aren't 50 states anymore. You know, President Reagan, you go back to 1984.
Yeah.
Look at the percentage of votes state by state. He didn't get 80% in one state and 49.1 in another.
Right.
You know, there wasn't Utah and Florida. It wasn't like that. He got like a straight 55 to 65 almost across the board.
Yeah.
You know, with the exception of what state was that? Oh, Minnesota.
This one.
Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's like I think to myself, who is going to break that? Even President Bush Sr., I mean, people forget this, in 1988, and some of it was kind of Reagan running for a third term, but he won, 410 electoral votes? Or I'm throwing a number out there. I'm not 100% sure, but
Right.
I don't think Michael Dukakis won more than 10 states or so.
No, he did poorly.
I mean, I know he won New York, but I mean, Bush pretty much won everywhere else, and you just wonder, is that ever going to happen again?
Well, I mean, we shall see. You know,
But it's like you and I talk about with the local stuff. We're long-term thinkers, and I think the parties today are all about the next election. They're not thinking 6, 8, 10 years down the road. You know, it's okay.
Right.
You know, we want to win the House of Representatives. Here's the 40 districts where we throw all our money.
Yeah.
We don't care about the other 380. You know, here's the 6 Senate races where all the money's going to be spent. We don't care about the other 25.
Exactly. We've got these sewn up. We're not going to worry about those. We're never going to get those. We're not going to worry about those.
We're not going to even try.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, has added to the. I mean, it's so weird to think in 1976,
Yeah.
Jimmy Carter won Texas and Gerald Ford won California.
Yeah.
Okay, now that's not that long ago. 2 generations maybe, but
Yeah.
you know, Ronald Reagan won Vermont. Okay, I mean, you know, it's like, is it that? Have we changed that much?
Yeah, I don't know. You know, it's a great question. You know, I don't think we're so far gone we can't ever come back around. But I think it's when you combine the how separate we are politically, how divisive that is with how political everything is.
Yeah.
You know, I think if
everything's a political issue.
If politics stayed with politics, I don't think it would be such a big thing. But it's like the color of that chair over there. Well, you like that color? You got to be some sort of...
CNN can't broadcast President Bush's funeral without keeping the camera on President Trump the entire time.
Yeah.
And Melania.
Yeah.
The First Lady, who's just, the nicest, quietest First Lady we've had in a long, long
Since
time.
Laura Bush, probably.
Probably.
Yeah.
And I mean, and she was a little more visible with
a little bit, but she was still pretty quiet.
Yeah,
and
she didn't do. Yeah, I mean,
she was known for being classy.
So anyway, I mean, CNN just contributing to the polarization of politics. They can't go through a funeral without trying to make, an issue out of whether Trump and Hillary shook hands or whether, who sang at what happened or whether he closed his eyes during prayer or whatever. I mean, I don't know how anybody watches that network. It's so boring. I mean, I don't get it. But, you talk about the polarization of politics. We're going to jump into what we're going to talk about today. I got in my trusty hands here.
I see that. You have a folder and everything. It's so official.
I printed stuff out,
wow.
believe it or not. I'm tired of screwing around on this phone. I keep forgetting to bring my laptop in. So, but we're talking about, money has influenced politics for a long time, and we have a First Amendment right to petition government and freedom of speech. And we're talking today about one umbrella group, I guess. We're being very specific today.
Yes.
Called the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, which is a branch of the AFL-CIO that is not just, spreading money around at the state and federal level, but they are doing it in local races too. And I'm not sure this was going on 10, 20 years ago. I think it was in school board races.
Yeah, absolutely, in school board races.
But I don't think this was going on in city council races. And
I don't think so
I don't
either.
Remember this.
And that's the thing. I mean, we have seen it in the schools for a long time. And like you said, yeah, there's a First Amendment right. But, I mean, whose right is really being protected here? I mean, because you have like teachers unions where they pay, they give money to a candidate, and it's kind of like picking your own boss because
trade union doesn't get to do that.
No,
I mean, if I'm a carpenter, an electrician, or a truck driver, I'm not deciding who's in charge of me.
No. No, but that's the way it works because these unions, the teachers give money to the unions then give money to the candidates that are on the school board that run the school district that the teachers work for.
And approve labor contracts.
Absolutely.
So the question becomes if the unions are supporting the workers and the school board is supporting the workers, who represents the rest of us?
Yeah.
But I mean, to me, it's bigger than that because I come from a union household when I was growing up.
Right.
My father was a Teamster. My grandfather was a Teamster. And I have a healthy respect for what unions used to stand for.
Well, absolutely.
Things like overtime and vacation time and safe working all the things.
Well, during the Industrial Revolution, you really needed that because you had abusive bosses.
Right. And you had leaders like Sam Gompers, for example, who was not married to a political party, was not. He was his own boss when I forget what union he ran, but back in the teens and around the turn of the century. And like I said, unions fought for things like that. They fought for labor conditions, better wages, which is understandable. I'm an individual. I believe in individualism, so a union is everybody getting paid the same wage and stuff is a little counter to what my personal philosophy is. But I'm not a union hater. But I'm admire of what unions used to be. But today, Jay, okay, what does a union stand for today? What does a union want? What is if I'm endorsing, not me, but if you're giving an endorsement to a candidate in the city council, now city council does not decide right to work. They don't decide. They don't make laws like that.
No. What do they do?
But I have a theory as to why.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if I'm sure you agree with it. I'll just
chances are we're kind of like of one brain sometimes. Scary, but
I mean, what is there to gain by taking union dues and, as I assume, where they get their money, and giving it to candidates running for a part-time job in a city council? School board's a little bit different. I get it, but what is it about running in a ward in Brooklyn Park or Crystal or you name the city that brings out unions? And remember, It isn't just money. It's volunteers. It's access to lists. It's help with lit, and maybe they've got somebody who makes it cheaply. And I mean, there's a lot of side things that go on.
Yeah.
Donations in kind. Maybe they have access to a great web person.
They might even use like shop printing presses.
It's very possible. So what is to be gained by that?
Well, you're putting together a bench for the future.
Bingo. They're picking the person.
Yeah, I'm tracking with you.
They're picking the person to succeed. What have we been saying in our 20K strong campaign?
We need to build a bench.
Make a baseball analogy.
Yep.
I am drafting somebody. I'm sending them to A-ball.
Yep.
I'm sending them to AA and AAA and the majors. I see a process of years over which this is going to occur.
So you can develop somebody
so
that they can learn the game.
Right, and you've got, I don't want to say you're in somebody's pocket, but somebody owes you a favor.
Yeah.
Which happens in politics all the time. But I mean, they are seeing what you and I are seeing, and the conservative PACs and so on put nothing into local elections, nothing whatsoever.
No, and that's a great point. I mean, you've got these PACs and stuff that are on the conservative side of the fence. They're only looking at the state races, only looking at the federal races, and they don't put anything into local races.
Right. Where's the Taxpayers League of Minnesota? Where's the Minnesota gun owners? Where's the people against Common Core? Where's their side group?
Minnesota Family Council, any of that.
They're not investing in the next generation of people, and people can move up through the ranks pretty quickly. It doesn't have to be a 10-year process. It can be. Yeah, it doesn't have to be. You combine money with somebody's ambition and an open seat somewhere. Yeah. Which you never know. Look at Mike Freiberg. I mean, goes on the Golden Valley City Council. All of a sudden, Sandy Peterson, who's since passed away, gets ill. Boom. They pluck a guy right there that they've been grooming the whole time anyhow. Yeah. So for 45B. So I mean, they are doing exactly what we preach. They're stealing it from us, as far as I'm concerned. We're not stealing it from them.
That's right.
But it is, I mean, this umbrella group, Jay, has got so many affiliates to it. I mean, it's not, I mean, it's government, unions, International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers.
Well, they might need to build some rockets and
hotel and restaurant employees, stage workers, iron workers, nurses association, transit workers. I mean, you name it, these people have got all these cities, I mean, page after page. Pipe fitters, plumbers, roofers, electricians, boilermakers, bakers, carpenters, elevator constructors, gas workers. I mean, the whole AFSCME umbrella, which is all the municipal state and county workers.
Picking their own boss.
Right. I mean, the person sitting there answering the phone in the city is part of a union?
Yeah.
What the hell special? No offense, because somebody needs to do that, but
right.
And
it might happen a little bit less for the clerk that answers the phone or the admin that answers the phone, but when you're a city manager and you make 6 figures a year and you're able to have your union dues go to pick the campaigns of the people that will be your boss to hire you, fire you, and allow you to hire your staff, that gets to be a little more serious business.
Not only that, but right into state law minimum salary.
Yeah.
For cities of a certain size,
right?
They have a minimum salary that you have to pay them, and they're kind of a club. They've manipulated the law, so they have to have certain qualifications. You can't just make anybody your city manager,
right?
I mean, I think a charter city might have a little more leeway. I think they could call it something different or something, but it is a club. And look, some of them are decent people who've worked their whole lives to get there. I'm not one of the things that people have to understand is I ain't the biggest union guy. Okay, I am an individual. If I'm better than the guy next to me, I should be getting paid more than him. That's my feeling.
Me too.
I think if I'm in a union, I lose some incentive to. That's just me. I'm somebody who wants to get to another place and always looking down the road. And I can't identify with somebody who does something for 40 years and never does something else. No offense on them, but I just can't. I am not wired that way. Mm-hmm. And you could classify me as a right-to-work guy in that I believe in freedom and that taking a job shouldn't obligate me to fund something I don't want to fund.
Yeah.
At the same time, I respect what unions have done in the past, but there's no middle ground with groups like this.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't be me. I'm an enemy to these people in their minds.
Yeah, so am I.
But I would say this. I mean, what does this... When you say somebody's labor-friendly today, what is the definition of that?
You're a Democrat.
Right. Or you're going to let the unions run... The inmates run the asylum in a way.
Right.
Whatever the unions want, they're just going to get.
They spend a lot of money, so they buy a lot of votes.
And they have far more money than any. I mean, the two biggest in Minnesota, the two biggest political and I can't remember where I saw this.
Education Minnesota is one of them,
and the other is Native Americans gambling.
Yeah,
which is one of the reasons. I mean, we can't. You can buy a lotto ticket at the gas station, but a slot machine there's a moral problem with that for some reason. It's absurd. I do favor gambling for different reasons than most people do.
Yeah.
For freedom reasons, not because I want a budget solution.
Right.
I don't want it to enrich the state. I want it to because I believe that people negative rights. I mean, that falls under that category to me. Of negative rights.
I mean, if I want to go set up a gin rummy table outside the local Holiday and make a few bucks, what's that to anybody?
Or lose a few. You could lose a few bucks.
I could.
I mean, I've seen you play cards. You could definitely lose a few bucks.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm not that bad.
But I mean, so this group, and I mean, the reason we mentioned them, particularly Crystal being our home base, and they have really put a lot of time and energy into the city of Crystal in the last couple of elections. And again, it's not just campaign contributions. It's all of the stuff that comes with that. And I sit there and I say to myself, and I'd like to ask somebody, I'd like to bring David Cummings in here and ask him how he justifies that and how is that going to influence how he, don't tell me that whoever's financing you doesn't influence who. If there was an oil company backing me for an office, I'd be painted as the guy who,
right.
I'd be the 1%er. Yeah. I mean, even if they give me $500 and that's it, I'm still painted as that.
Yeah.
So how do you reconcile those two things as a council member? How do I take a union endorsement and knock on a door and say, well, I'm going to listen to you. I'm going to put you first and all that stuff. I mean, how do you say that with any kind of, with any kind of credibility?
Well, I don't think this is the way it was meant to be. You mentioned Samuel Gompers before. I think he's rolling over in his grave. I mean, he was the first leader of the AFL.
AFL is
and this Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation is an AFL-CIO organization.
CIO must have been John Lewis. Must have been the CIO.
Probably. And so all of this, they bring in all these outside groups. I mean, you went through them. These aren't all AFL-CIO.
No.
And so.
AFSCME, they're their own.
SEIU.
Yeah, they're their own. I don't know how you put it. They're their own separate union. They're not. They're not part of any kind of umbrella.
Right.
I would say too. Who is leading these unions? Samuel Gompers wasn't a guy with political ambitions here. He was,
right.
Like I said, he fought for good working conditions, overtime, reasonable hours, things like that. There was no attempt to remake the nation, or he didn't stick his nose into LGBT issues, or
right,
things like that.
But yet, I had a chance to get my eyes on the latest Education Minnesota magazine that came out.
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, front cover was Tim Walz celebrating his win, and it said "Educator in Chief" with an exclamation point.
But it also belies something too. I mean, couldn't I make the case that I want tax cuts because I want people working at these labor unions to take home more of their money?
Mm-hmm.
Where are they on things like that?
They don't care about that.
They don't care about that. They don't care about your take-home pay.
No, they don't.
But But what I'm saying is, the definition of supporting labor.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe it's a person in office's job to represent everybody, not to pick the little guy over the big guy. Everybody has equal rights. And you either believe that or you don't. If you're going to say that union members have some sort of, or that the Constitution only applies to you if you make less than $100,000, you are representing people unequally. You take an oath to the Constitution. So, I mean, even at the local level.
Yeah.
But I should mention the executive board of this. Interesting who these people are. Just go through the first couple of them. I've never seen an organization have an executive vice president, a first vice president, and a second vice president.
Yeah.
I guess if you want a lot of government, you got to have a lot of executive board.
Well, of course.
But the leader of this, I can't even pronounce this name. Do you want to take a stab at pronouncing this name?
Yeah, Chelsea Glaubitz-Gabiu.
Okay, that's about as good as I could possibly do. She worked for Paul Thiessen, the Senate former. He ran for governor for a short time.
Yes.
The former. Was he the minority leader, or was he the speaker? I don't think he was the speaker.
No, I think
he was the minority leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives here in Minnesota. She's also worked on other campaigns, including Al Franken. This isn't a lady who labored in some factory somewhere and is sure she was chosen because she's well connected.
Mm-hmm.
And knows this person. This isn't somebody who's been knitting needles here for 30 years and is working at that. Been working at that.
Right. I mean, she was involved in politics. Then is here now leading this group to elect politicians. Right.
So does she care about the workers and their that stuff, or is this a power play? Mm-hmm. That's going on right now. And it's a legitimate question to ask.
Yeah.
And who picks this Who picks this? Is this like electing the Pope, where they all go in a room and some smoke comes out somewhere?
Well, and this isn't a union. I mean, unions do have elections for stewards and picking union bosses, things like that. This is just an umbrella organization, so I assume that it's all internal within the organization.
It's leadership picking other leadership. It's like Hennepin County. It's like the county's picking the CTIB. We're elected now, so we're going to send you over to the watershed.
Yeah.
So, they've got officers, they've got staff, they've got lists of retirees. It's funny, their Take Action group is under construction, and their constituency groups is under construction. Who would be their constituency groups? Would that be like Planned Parenthood and people like that?
It could be.
Yeah.
Could be. I mean, I don't know. They're notoriously vague about some of this, unfortunately. They do have a link over to their constituency groups, but it's under construction, as is it seems like some of the most important pages on this website, which MinneapolisUnions.org. So it's funny. You've got this site that's the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, but it's a Minneapolis-based group that is affecting elections outside of Minneapolis.
Yeah, in fact, they have information for candidates seeking endorsement. This is the previous one in 2018. Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation screens candidates for state legislature, county, municipal school board, or other local elected offices in Hennepin, Anoka, Wright, Scott, Carver, Meeker, and McLeod counties.
Wow. Goes all the way out to McLeod.
Yeah, and candidates seeking an endorsement basically have to request one.
Mm-hmm.
And they get screened. I don't know what the questions are. It won't say. They have to include the candidate name, the committee that you come up with, email, cell phone, campaign manager, things like that, campaign website. So they have a process. They have like an interview, but we don't know what is asked or what is expected in that.
Right.
I think I got an idea.
Yeah. That just kind of blows my mind all the way out to McLeod County. Now, I know that the people on the Hutchinson City Council think they're Minneapolis, but there's really no similarity between Minneapolis and McLeod County.
Huh.
So
yeah, and they've got this letter that they put out or something like that, where they have all these things where they offer door knockers, phone bankers, get out the vote efforts. They backed Ilhan Omar. They backed
you don't say.
Tina Smith and Amy Klobuchar, How to Make Washington Work.
Worse? Is that what you said?
Work.
Oh, I thought you said worse.
Tim Walz pledges to be an organizer-in-chief as governor. Walz, Klobuchar, Smith lead the labor ticket. Everybody can make a difference. Blah, blah, blah. There's just a whole big thing. Hollis Winston, who ran for mayor of Brooklyn Park, jobs and affordable housing. What does that have to do with labor?
I don't know.
Affordable housing. I didn't see that on the list of people. Maybe I should have looked at it a little bit. They backed 4 people in the Osseo school board race. Wow. Two of them, I should say, or 2 of the candidates won. I don't know what that meant exactly. But they have been, it's been quite a while here, the last couple of times around, that they have been pushing people in certain local races now. And I think you're right. I think it is all to build a bench and get these candidates there that they can pluck in to the jobs in future races for bigger elections, congressional elections, state elections, you name it.
Yeah.
They want to have people to plug right in there to run.
Right.
So what we say, I don't want to call it the other side, but they're doing it. Mm-hmm. And they're going to double down on this. I said, Jay, one thing, you go back and read our blog and stuff from years ago. I said, that there was a partisan twist to things going on in Crystal. I don't think you and I made it partisan. I disagree with that. I think that our opponents would say that. I think they're just rationalizing their own losing.
Yeah.
Our effort was to get a clique and some arrogant office holders who had been there a long time and replace them with, I would say, younger, maybe more favorable to our point of view. But
they're definitely not from the same party. They don't affiliate with a party.
Right. But, I mean, the point is that I didn't necessarily look at every candidate as Democrat, Republican.
Oh, no.
Our opponents there
They do. Yeah.
And I predicted after 2014 in the big sweep that we had that this stuff was going to get worse. Go back and look at posts I made back in 2014-15. I said, this is not going to get better.
Right.
I said, our opponents are going to conclude that they weren't radical enough.
Mm-hmm.
And what have they done? They have not only proved me right and you right, but they've gone even overboard from what I thought would happen.
Oh, absolutely.
Even me. And I never take... half of me doesn't take these people seriously, and half of me really pays attention. So I'm somewhere in between.
Oh, I always pay attention. I always pay attention. My
depends who's talking.
Well,
Sometimes
I don't I don't ever overestimate our competition, because they are serious about what they want to do. And it's important for us never to do that, never to take for granted what they're capable of. And
how much can one election change things? One election can
lot.
change everything.
It can change everything. We talked about this last week with Mayor Jim Adams.
Right.
When you're trying to put a program into place that's going to take years to, when you have a large ship, it takes a long time for that large ship to turn. It can't turn on a dime. When you're talking about something like getting rid of city debt, or at least making it in healthy balance to the rest of your finances, when you talk about getting rid of hidden taxes, you can't do it overnight. It takes 2, 3, 4 terms to be able to do that.
All these taxes didn't come overnight. They're not all going to go away overnight.
Right. And in one election, I mean, if you've got 3 or 4 people up for election and you happen to lose a good number of that, you can lose, your majority, and it changes everything. Or even if you just bring people in that don't understand, and it's hard to sell them on your vision.
Right. And let me go back to the union thing for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm looking at our former favorite mayor.
Oh boy.
Now, I know we mentioned this on a show maybe a year or so ago, but I want to go over. I mean, she got money and endorsement from the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation that we're talking about.
That seems like a conflict of interest to me, Andrew.
It does?
Yes.
Oh, considering her husband's part of that.
On the board, yeah. Yeah.
There's no conflict of interest.
Oh, no.
But listen to this. Listen to where else she got money. The North Central State Regional Carpenters Union in St. Paul. That is considered PAC Fund 3056. Minneapolis Region, it's a legislative fund 30011. SEIU Union 113 in St. Paul. Laborers District Council. Once again, a political fund in St. Paul. Another PAC, Women Winning. That's basically a pro-abortion group.
Right.
The IBEW, Local 292 in Minneapolis, Canada.
Why are they putting money in it?
I don't know, but these groups, I'm adding it up here with my Minnesota math, gave Renee Bowman $2,400.
She still lost.
She raised $3,385. So what's about 75% of her money. And if you look at her personal donations of $100 or more, there were 3 of them.
Yeah.
One was her husband.
Yep.
One was Frank Neubacher, who is the chair of SD45, I might add, DFL.
That's funny because she wasn't very kind about how she talked about the SD45 DFL after the election.
Well, he personally donated. She does not have SD45 DFL on here.
Oh, no.
So either they didn't give her $100 or they didn't give her anything. And then some other guy who lives in Crystal, I don't recognize his name. So that right there is, again, look at that. What if every union came in and gave the maximum to all these candidates? They could be $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 or more.
Yeah.
I mean, ahead of anybody else running for this office. But this is the problem that we're seeing. David Cummings, another losing candidate there. He does not have the best writing. Education Minnesota and Osseo, $300. So Education Minnesota is in Osseo.
Yes.
He's helping fund a city council race in Crystal.
Right.
The Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation, the Minneapolis Federation of Teachers, Local 59, Senate District 45 DFL, and that was probably, he got 1, 2, 3 donations from citizens of $100 or more.
But
one of which lives in Crystal.
Yeah, 2 of them were from Iowa, right? And
one is
maybe
from Maple
related?
Grove, one is from Brooklyn Park.
Okay. That was then one of the other candidates got
I
a couple
don't know.
from Iowa.
I don't know who, but
I remember writing an article, but that seems like a lifetime ago now.
probably was.
Yes, it probably was. So, I mean, and that's crazy. So you've got all of these outside groups pouring money into a city to in effect, a city election. I mean, Crystal doesn't even really send people to Osseo schools. I mean, I suppose through open enrollment they could have a handful. But, I mean, you're going to have more like people from that one precinct of Plymouth that's an SD45 that are going to Osseo. But, again, that's not Crystal. So I don't know why that is. Minneapolis schools, not the school district, but the teacher federation, Minneapolis pouring money into Crystal city council elections.
Nuts.
Yeah.
It's crazy. So, but like I'm saying, I mean, this is what we can be, if you want to call it, up against here.
So you have these unions that are giving directly to these campaigns, and also, I would guess, giving money to the Minneapolis Regional Labor Federation in order for the Labor Federation to give money to these to these candidates as well. So really, you're spreading the money around to be able to give more. You can only give so much as a labor federation or a union, but if you give money to another organization, they can turn around and give a whole bunch more money.
But like we stress, what a group can directly give a candidate is one thing.
Yep.
What they can do, I don't want to say off the books because that's sounds shady, but it really isn't. Get out the vote, lists, phone calls, sign locations, collusion with another political party, perhaps.
Yeah.
Volunteers, accessed information. I mean, what they can do outside. I mean, if it was all just about cutting a $500 check, these groups wouldn't have the influence that they do.
Right.
But the truth is, it's about a lot more than that. And you talk about women winning, for example. I mean, that's a little off the subject, but they're basically a pro-abortion group. Well, where are the pro-life groups? I mean, they're all doing a great job at the state level, handing out money up there. I mean, and endorsements. I mean, They do that. There are, I forget the main group here in Minnesota, but Minnesotans Concerned for Life or something.
Yeah.
But when I've been involved in state candidates, they've always sent out a questionnaire. They do endorse. They do lit.
Yeah.
As an independent expenditure. But why aren't they thinking about the next people to come up like pro-abortion groups are?
Right. It's a great question, and like we said before, I mean, these labor groups are doing it. They are funding the future.
How about the pizza and politics thing going on in Crystal? Crystal and New Hope, but New Hope's not talked about.
Right, because they don't have any serious challengers to.
Right.
It's like
they know that they've pretty much got at least 4 people in their pocket.
Right.
So they don't have to worry about that. But I mean, they know what city they don't control.
That's right.
And they probably, there's probably other cities where they maybe don't have a majority of people who subscribe to what they think. Maybe a little bit on their side politically who aren't, lockstep with quote unquote labor. Yeah. Who are these people to represent labor? We all are laborers to some extent or not, aren't we?
Yeah.
So when they're speaking for labor, I mean, they're speaking for organized labor, which is mostly government workers.
Yeah.
Not all, but mostly government. And like I said before, what do they want? I mean, if you look at what workers went through 70, 80, 90, 100 years ago, what are these folks, what are they after here? What's the end game?
I don't know. I mean, other than
it's just more and
better
more
contracts.
I think part of it too is to make sure that if whatever happens in the private sector, the public sector is insulated from anything. Remember what Chris Christie went through in New Jersey when he just tried to freeze state? He proposed not to cut a soul. He wanted to just freeze everybody's salary for a year or something like that.
Yeah.
This is a while back now. New Jersey has odd year elections and stuff. And just got beat over the head about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, hey, how about, so-and-so getting their home for? What are you? Are you insulated from supply and demand in the real world? I'm just supposed to endlessly cut you checks even if I'm out of them?
Yeah.
Is that what they're after, ultimately?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't understand it. I understand from a worker standpoint wanting to have security and pay, wanting to know that you're going to get raises, wanting to know
but
that
you know what? You know what?
Benefits.
Government workers have a lot of security.
Oh, yes.
What more can they want?
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm saying. What's the end game?
Yeah, well, when you're talking about government workers, when you're talking about AFSCME and government workers, like we said before, I mean, you're picking your own bosses,
right? And I'm not anti somebody who makes a living as a bus driver or a teacher or a police officer, or I'm not anti them. I mean, it just seems like nobody can. You have to pick one extreme or the other, and I consider myself neither. Mm-hmm. I'm not pro or anti-union. I am pro freedom as a worker. I respect, like I said, what unions used to be, but I don't know what they are anymore.
No.
So, I mean, what's being pro-union? What does that mean?
I think it has taken on, like we said earlier in the podcast, how everything has become political.
Yeah.
I think it's really become a way to drive political points, where if you are on the left and you believe with abortion, you believe with in mandatory minimum wage hikes, you believe in
Labor's endorsed that.
Yeah, I know they have.
You know why? Because a lot of union contracts start at blank plus the minimum wage.
Yep.
That's how they're structured. Our starting pay is $7 over the minimum wage. Well, minimum wage goes up. Everybody around gets a raise without automatically.
Yeah.
So that they've bought in to the 15 now, which will be 20 now, and 50 now, and 100 now. But Education Minnesota, too, has been out there taking positions on social issues and so on and so forth. And it's kind of like, well, wait a minute. You're supposed to – your job as a union member is to represent the people in your union, not to go out. I mean, if I were in a union and I had people doing that, that would really I would be really pissed. Mm-hmm. It's like, wait, hey, I'm not giving you the authority to go out speaking for us under that union banner and saying, I mean, we talked about, I did some research on union household voting. President Trump got 40% of the union vote.
Yeah.
Mitt Romney got 38%, I believe.
Wow.
I mean, Ronald Reagan got close to 50. I believe 46, 47, something like that. I don't have it in front of me anymore. But, I mean, the rank and file in a lot of these unions seem to think for themselves and aren't necessarily lockstep with.
Yeah. Now,
I don't know how they figure that out.
Yeah, and I don't know if there's a difference between right-to-work states and not. Because when you don't have right-to-work, I mean, everybody goes in the union. And it doesn't matter what your political affiliation is. You don't get a choice. You're in the union.
Right.
When you have a right-to-work state, you have more flexibility. You might have a lower percentage of people in the union that,
or it may just wither on the vine, as we used to say. I mean, it may not exist anymore. I mean, you look at companies and where they are relocating. I mean, you look at how cars are being built in Kentucky, and Toyota and Hondas. A lot of them are made here. They're not made in Detroit.
Right.
They're made in right-to-work states. Kentucky being a big one. Arkansas, where Walmart's headquarters is. I mean, you see, we've lost, just since Governor Dayton has been here, how many Fortune 500 companies have, Delta didn't want to come here because of the regulation and the healthcare and all that. So, I mean, our whole point of this is to look out for this stuff. And I think you as a voter need to pay attention to who is endorsed by a party, endorsed by a cause. You need to look up what these causes are standing for, who they're in bed with. And I think it says a lot about a candidate. And that's not to say candidates are evil or bad people, but I don't know how somebody knocks on a door and says, I'm going to listen to you, I'm going to prioritize you, blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, they're taking money from I mean, if I, like I've said, if I were taking money from an oil company, I'd be part of big oil. I'm the 1%er.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the you know, whoever's funding me is but unions, they don't seem to invoke that same attitude.
No, for some reason they don't. They have a lot of money.
They are the number one contributors in the state of Minnesota.
Have you ever seen a union boss driving around in a piece of junk car?
They're on a bike in Minneapolis.
Well, no, they aren't. All their union folks are, but in January, driving around in a sidewalk filled with slush and ugh.
No doubt about it.
But the point is here, so again, the web address here is minneapolisunions.org. They talk about the people that they're endorsing. They talk about where they're getting involved in races. It's important to keep an eye out because when they do start to come into your community, as we noticed in Crystal, they started with some meetings. They would team up with the DFL and they would have meetings looking for candidates even before they had a candidate. They would put the feelers out there. They would be looking for, people to get involved. You had mentioned, I mean, they were like pizza parties. They would meet. They
were disguised as Crystal and New Hope, but we all knew what the real
purpose was. But I mean, like we see, I mean, they put candidates up in Crystal. They put candidates up at the Osseo School Board, Brooklyn Park, Richfield. I mean, Prior Lake,
Center,
Brooklyn Center.
County.
Yeah. Yep, and so it is important for you to keep an eye out for this because I'm not saying it's impossible, obviously, because in Crystal, I mean, we beat them off most of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, I mean, if a candidate in a
Hold it. I'm going to rephrase something.
Uh-oh.
In Crystal, we tend to beat them most of the time.
Beat them off?
Oh, now I got to record that again. Hold on. I can't say that. I'm going to cut this out. I meant with a stick.
Right.
Yes.
I get it.
All right.
You're using what we call in San Francisco a metaphor.
Yes. In Crystal.
Defeat them.
Yes. In Crystal, we defeat them most of the time.
Right, but again, they're not deterred by an election loss or two. Remember, politics never stops. In their mind, the 2020 race started last month.
Right.
We have to have the same attitude. And it's a 24/7 cutthroat business. But bottom line is, I mean, you check out the campaign finance reports. You request them from your city clerk. They have to give them to you.
They should be online.
They should be. Crystal's probably the only city in the country that makes it 2 clicks away and you can see anything.
Yep.
They're, again, one of the few cities to do a lot of things like we talked about last week.
Right.
But, I mean, look at who's doing that and look who is financed by people who live in your city, work in your city, pay taxes in your city, and who is financed by some big union boss somewhere else, sitting in Little Canada,
right,
and donating money to a city council race in Crystal. It's just a fact, and we have to be open and honest about it. So, especially when you're running a no labels campaign.
Exactly, you can't be nonpartisan and be I don't know.
And take money from a partisan group.
Yeah.
It's pretty absurd. I mean, I can at least respect Bernie Sanders, not as crazy as he is, not taking big donations from. I don't think they'd give it to him, but I mean, they probably don't want to. But at least the guy stands on his principles.
Yeah.
Russ Feingold, as big of a nutcase as he is, didn't believe in soft money, wouldn't take it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a certain grudging respect I have for that. As I don't think there's anything wrong with soft money. I don't think there's anything wrong with giving money to a political party. Again, people should have that as a First Amendment right and a right to petition government. But somebody who disagrees with me and wants to follow what they're doing, so be it. Good for them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I just feel like we're behind the 8 ball in this. And,
absolutely.
Us regular folks can either get run over by these unions or stand independent. And, that's what we want you to consider doing.
Yep. And that's why we're trying to build Team 20K, because it is the farm team that is going to bring a depth in talent to your city, to your county, to your school district, by filling up advisory commissions, by electing people to these nonpartisan offices. That is how we win in the end. And so what are we going to do about it? We're going to go wherever we need to spread our story, to get people interested in being involved, and if necessary, to hold their hand and walk them in and help them apply for these commissions. We will do what we need to make sure that this becomes a reality. And so if you want to get involved, first of all, your first step is right here at Community Solutions Minnesota. You email us at commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. That is commsolutionsmn@gmail.com. And I promise you that we will do what we can, and we will come out, we'll talk to your group, we will advise you, we'll work with you. The other thing you can do is always listen to our podcast and spread the word. Share this stuff. Comment on it. Start the discussion so that your neighbors, your friends, your family can see what's going on and begin to start thinking about this stuff themselves. Because once it's all about attention. It's all about putting it at the front of our consciousness. And as soon as we do that, we start to take notice. We start to say, hey, things aren't right, and we begin to fix them. And that's the important thing. So get a hold of us, and we will do our best to help you out, because that's why we're here. Team 20K or bust. What do you think, Andrew?
20K eventually. That's my kind of thinking.
Oh, yeah. Well,
a little bit at a time.
Might be on the slow boat to China, but it's
That's
all right.
Right.
It's all right. Not that I would want to go to China now, anyways.
No,
but
I wouldn't think I'd ever want to go there.
But who knows?
Hey, China's more capitalistic than California is. So,
well,
maybe there's some benefits to it.
I don't know. With all of the Microsoft technology we talked about earlier.
They don't have the one kid policy anymore, do they?
I think so. Yeah.
Do they have that?
Yeah. I'm a firstborn. I would be.
So am I.
I'd be okay.
My wife wouldn't be.
Right. My brother can't go over there or else. Yeah. Oh, boy.
Fair game on them over in China.
On that note, guys, seriously, get a hold of us, and we will be back in 1 week with another fantastic podcast. We've done our part in Minnesota, and we love you, but now it's your turn to get to work.